Hey, what's going on, everybody? Isaac here, Civil Engineering Academy. Thanks for joining me today on another sweet podcast episode. Thanks for tuning in and liking and sharing this stuff. Appreciate that. Share it with a friend. There's only so many civil engineers out there in the world, so we do appreciate that. And if you need help on your journey to become a professional engineer, definitely check out the resources we have at civilengineeringacademy.com. We got exams and courses waiting for you. So today we got a good one. I'm going to bring my brother Mark on. We're going to talk about the ASCE Infrastructure Report Card that they produce, and we do this every once in a while, but for 2025 they've got a new one, and we're going to talk about the country has received the United States for infrastructure, and we'll do some breakdowns of stuff. There's a variety of things that we could dive into. There's so much material here, you could probably spend a lot more time into this, but we're going to cover the executive summary that they produced, and I'll show you some other things too. But without further ado, let's get Mark on and let's start talking about America's infrastructure. What's going on, Mark?
Hey, just joining you again, Isaac. It's always a good time.
It's always a good time.
Always a good time.
So we've kind of gotten in the habit of doing an episode talking about the ASCE Infrastructure Report Card, and wanted to come on because they just recently produced one.
Yeah, they did. So we've got the 2025 report card, and it's, I would say, generally positive. It looks like our infrastructure is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and just so people are aware, if you're watching, I mean, we have this as a video, but if you're listening to this, they've got a main website. If you go to reportcard.org/story map, they've got a really cool interactive map where you kind of scroll through and it zooms out and out and out. Starts in Minneapolis, but once you get past Minneapolis, you start looking at power plants and transmission lines. You start looking at ports and waterways, and I think it's a really cool graphic that they put together.
Yeah, what's cool is you can see, like, they kind of display it, the graphic. It's like it's a weighted graphic. So kind of some of the bigger what are those, octagons?
Yeah, these are
pentagons. The bigger those are, the worse the infrastructure is.
Yeah, I think it's kind of both ways. Like, this is showing more. This particular one is showing more cargo transport.
I got you.
New Orleans,
it's a volume measurement.
Yeah, that's a volume thing.
You.
But others are probably similar. But
yep.
Anyway, go check that one out. And then you could also download the full report, and that is quite lengthy. It's 225 pages, so a little light reading for you. But you go grab that one if you care to check that one. But today we're going to hit on the executive summary, which kind of summarizes the whole thing up. So, Mark, what's your takeaway on the executive summary and maybe how they break down the grades?
Yeah, what I like to do is remind myself of what the grading scale actually means, right? So if something gets an A, which I don't think there's anything that got an A that I noticed, but yeah, A means it's exceptional and it's fit for the future. Like, it's probably fairly new structure or facility and it's ready to go. And it's been designed for resiliency and everything else that gets it ready for the future. If it's B, it's good. It's adequate for now, but it may not be future-proofed, right? A grade C means it's mediocre. It means it needs some attention. It's fair to good condition, but it may have some deterioration, needs some attention, right? And if it gets a D grade, then it's at risk, right? It's probably still standing up. It's probably still functioning, but it's really approaching the end of its service life, and it's on its last leg. And then if it gets an F grade, why, it's failing. Like, it can't even serve the purpose or the demands that are put on that facility. So it gets an F, and it's may have signs of imminent failure. So it needs attention right now.
Do you know, and maybe it describes it ahead, but do you know overall how they're actually getting these grades? I mean, it takes an army to design stuff, but how are you going out there and getting grades on all of it?
Yeah, so these are all members of ASCE, and they usually have prominent positions as they may be head of DOT, right, departments. They may be a head of a water resource department in a local municipality. They're individuals that serve on industry boards, but they usually have a strong affiliation with ASCE, which helps them obviously get organized. But they're usually heads of those types of organizations. Those are the people that are going out and assigning these grades.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So let's dive into the executive summary. The overall score or grade that we have as a country looks like a C, which is, I think, better than what it used to be.
It is better. And so what they're attributing this increase or this improvement in grade, which it's interesting too, because they've divided up the grades across 18 different categories now, where they used to have 14, and back in the day there was even fewer than that. But
more data.
They're attributing a lot of that to the increase in funding that Congress has applied to infrastructure projects in the recent past here. So that's what they're saying. They're saying the investment in America's infrastructure has gone up, and that's the reason why things are improving generally.
And they know that for the first time since 1998, no report card categories were rated a D-. So good job.
Yeah. See, it's getting better. And it says this improvement was possible due to the government and private sector prioritizing investments, which is great. I mean, it needs to happen.
Yeah, so some of the new categories, like broadband, was introduced as a category, which is kind of interesting. I guess we do care about our internet.
Well, yeah. So it is deemed, or it's assessed as essential infrastructure now. Which is understandable. We have to be connected, and it's the backbone of business and pretty much everything that we do.
Two categories, energy and rail, were downgraded because of concerns related to capacity, future needs, and safety. That's kind of my world with transmission lines. It sounds like we're realizing we've got stuff aging and we don't have enough capacity. So
yeah, I mean, you can speak a lot to that, Isaac, but I mean, some of the infrastructure on the power grid, I mean, they're using stuff that transformers and different things that, I mean, how old is some of that stuff?
Well, we're in Utah, and we've got some wood structures that have been out there for over 100 years just because the climate we're in, they can do well.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff is being upgraded. Resiliency is kind of a key word here, and upgrading stuff. Wildfire is a big deal, making sure things can handle that, because that continues to be a huge deal, especially in the West. So I could see where that comes into play. So they list a couple things here, some trends worth noting. The first one, aging infrastructure systems are increasingly vulnerable to natural disasters and extreme weather conditions. So that does lead into that. And they list that does create unexpected and often unavoidable risks to public safety and economy. So I just mentioned this in my world, wildfire is a big deal, and they're trying to work hard to upgrade old systems and making sure either you're going from wood to steel, you're upgrading how fast the electrical system reacts to a fault on lines. There are all kinds of things. Conductor, there's just a whole wide variety of things that, at least on the energy side, they're looking at updating, and they are doing so. But how does that relate to construction, buildings, bridges, all that?
Well, that resiliency word is getting into the design of structures in the commercial world as well. And so it used to be performance-based design, which it still is. But now they're adding this resilient component to the design, so that owners of projects, owners of facilities, can actually get their building designed to not just be have life safety as the priority, right? For if there's a seismic event or a serious weather event, a hurricane and the like, people can still get out of the building safely, and the life safety components of the design are there, but now there's a resiliency that's coming into play where owners want to have their facilities designed to be occupiable or usable immediately after a major event. And so that's becoming more and more prominent. It's something that it does cost a little bit more money, right, to make your building or your facility resilient to weather events and seismic events, so that it's actually fully usable after something happens. But it's becoming more and more of I would say a viable option for owners to be able to.
And I guess if they're willing to spend the money to keep the asset up, I guess that's good. But
yeah, and the codes continue to move that direction. I think society or the industry in general is valuing resiliency more and more because it's a good idea that things can last a lot longer and can withstand certain events. Of course, you got to assess the actual risk that a certain facility has, right?
Yeah.
And make sure that you're not getting crazy with your design, because you can design things that are, way overboard and cost too much money, and you don't want to go that way. But it's becoming more of a priority, I would say.
Okay. The second one they detail here is that recent federal and state investments have made a positive impact, but full force of increased funding will take years to realize. So they want sustained investment as a key to providing certainty to ensure planning goes to development, as well as making larger infrastructure projects attainable.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah. And so you can see some value in that, because I mean, think of any infrastructure project or any transportation project, and from concept to completion, what's that duration? It's years. It depends on the size of the project, but it's years and years and years of not only design and development, but then the actual execution on after the design is complete. And there's different delivery methods that kind of combine those two things, but it's like turning the Titanic around. It's just there's so much construction and projects have inertia. It just takes a lot to get them going, but once they're going, you don't want them to stop, and it takes funding to make that happen. I think that's what they're asking for there.
Plus, they highlight here demands on infrastructure systems have intensified. So not only do you need sustained money to keep that momentum going, but the demand is higher.
Yeah.
So,
and especially, I mean, you can speak to this, Isaac, but our electrical grid too, right? I mean, everything's getting electrified these days.
Yeah, and we're everyone's behind the 8 ball, because the more we have these data centers and such, like the power companies just don't have the ability to keep that stuff on. And so people are looking at energizing that themselves. And that's why you get some of these, nuclear plants that live on the property. That's coming up. SMUs, I think, is what they're calling them. And there's just alternative thinking to how we can energize the demand that we have. And as part of that, it requires transmission lines to move energy around. And some of those projects just take forever. If you can imagine building a line that's 500 miles long across different states, the permitting and all the
right-of-way issues that have to go along with that. And then, there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of political headwinds. Maybe that's the way to put it, against like nuclear energy. And isn't that kind of the way things need to go to like be able to handle the demand? And then if we go that way, does that lend itself more towards like maybe smaller, isolated kind of nuclear energy plants that can service individual facilities? Or how's that going to go?
That is what data centers are kind of looking into, is because the demand is so high. In order for a lot of power companies to supply that demand, they have to build more generation. Mm-hmm. And so either, and who floats the bill for that? Because if the data centers are requesting the load, is the data center paying for that generation now, or does it get passed to the people?
Right, the public.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions around that, and there is a lot of political headwinds as to which route we go, and a lot of environmental restrictions have been a little bit lifted in some states, I would say, in terms of clean coal and things of that nature, where there was a huge push for wind and solar.
Yeah.
And there's just not a great way to sustain base loads with wind and solar. But
yeah, that's my feeling, is like more and more people are realizing that the demands on the electrical grid, like wind and solar, is just, it's kind of a nice idea, but it in no way can meet the demands, especially as, more and more people own electric vehicles, EVs, and
yeah. And it's good to have a diversified portfolio, just like your investments. You want a little bit of wind, a little bit of solar, some battery storage backup, and
right.
Get a good mix of
But
all.
solar and wind is not the panacea, the cure all for everything. It's not.
That's I think the people are realizing that.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right.
Anyway, continued investment is a big one. Third one they talk about is unreliable or unavailable data on key performance indicators continues to impact certain infrastructure sectors. So are they looking at adding more categories to this?
Well, I think it's just, since they've added new categories, they haven't had a good history of keeping track of the condition of these facilities that may fall into a new category, right? So they don't have the heuristics, they don't have the historical data to make a full, I guess, a fully informed judgment on the condition of things. But because as part of that, they're trying to say, okay, this is how much resources or how much money we need to apply to a given category. This is how much money we need to fix it. And then they're trying to figure out where the gaps are, like how much they think we have a gap in funding. And so when you don't have a good track record of tracking performance in a category, it's hard to make that full assessment. I think that's what they're trying to talk about here.
That makes sense. They do applaud Congress and state and local policymakers and private sector for demonstrating leadership for our infrastructure, and making investments into that. So
yeah,
sure, excited about
so
that.
It's encouraging that the public and Congress, our representatives, everybody's recognizing this is a need, and we're moving forward.
So let's look at some. They do have some methodology that they talk about. They look at capacity, they look at the condition, they look at funding, they look at the future need, the operation and maintenance, the public safety, the resilience, and the innovation. So I think all of that goes into your grade as they assess it.
Yep.
Okay, why don't you give us a breakdown here? What's the overall? And
so here's our 18 categories. And like I said before, there was fewer than this, but they've decided to break some specific things out that need specific attention. And they're critical things. It just makes more sense to break some of these things out nowadays, because like broadband, for instance, that's become more and more of a critical issue.
Yep.
So our overall grade is a C, which is improving overall. That's great. But as you go down the list here, aviation, D+.
Well, that's been in the news a few times.
Yeah, that's a problem. Bridges get a C, which is, that's an improvement. Here locally, I see a lot of bridge construction, and at least our local DOT is very concerned about bridges that are deteriorating, and they've made big strides in improving a lot of those. Broadband, it looks like we get a C+ on that. Not everybody has access to broadband internet. I think there's a lot of solutions coming down the pike to improve that. So that should get better as we go along. Dams get a D+. That's a little concerning.
There's a lot of D pluses in here.
Yeah, because when dams fail, that's pretty disastrous thing. So that needs to be looked at. Drinking water, C-.
Huh.
That's concerning too. Anywhere you go in the country, you want to be able to get a drink of water and not have to worry about the quality of the water that you're drinking. Energy D plus.
Tastes like sulfur.
Yeah. Yeah, it can.
Have the
Energy D plus, Isaac. Does that
oof.
ring true to you?
Yeah, it probably does. Like I said, there is a ton of money being poured into transmission and distribution. And so I think until more lines are built and we actually meet the demands that are out there, this will continue to be a low score.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a long time. So we are not ready to energize the world.
Yeah. We need a lot of work there. Hazardous waste is a C. I don't know. That's higher than what I would think it is, but what's cool about some of the new nuclear technology that they've got, they can actually use some of the old nuclear waste to power new nuclear plants, which is kind of cool. The new tech they've got for nuclear power plants is really good. But inland waterways, C minus, levees, D plus. I mean, that's another concerning thing because it protects communities.
Dams and levees, man. What's up?
Wow. They're bad. That's old infrastructure. Our ports get a B.
Wow.
That's the highest grade on the chart, which is great for our economy. If they're efficient, and it sounds like the infrastructure they're servicing the ports is pretty good. That's good news.
Public goods and services.
Yeah, we got to keep that stuff. Keep the goods and services flowing. Public parks, C minus. That's interesting that that's a separate category.
Yeah, I'm wondering why.
Yeah. Rail, we get a B minus on rail, which isn't too horrible. Roads in general get a D plus. That's not very good. I would think roads and bridges, the grades should be similar because usually infrastructure projects like that, they usually kind of go together. Like if you're doing a bridge rehab or a bridge reconstruction, there's usually some road work that's going along with that as well. So I don't understand the
roads continue to underperform.
Yeah, the delta between those two, they should be a little closer in my opinion. Schools D plus. We got a lot of deteriorating schools. Solid waste, we got a C plus, which isn't horrible, but that definitely improvement there. Stormwater D, transit D, and our wastewater infrastructure gets a D plus.
Man, that's not good.
So
what's funny about schools, I'm just going back to schools, is I've seen a lot of schools, we're in Utah, being replaced. Like they're tearing down old schools and building new ones.
Yeah.
Seems like all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder if they're doing that around the country. Is that, I mean, that's related to the building itself, right?
Yeah, it is because they don't meet current seismic codes. There's a lot of them. So we had a lot of schools, a lot of older schools built in the 50s and the 60s that were unreinforced masonry. So, we've seen some older high schools come down and just get completely replaced. They look at doing some kind of retrofit, seismic rehab on a building before they consider knocking the whole thing down. But sometimes it's cheaper just to knock it down and replace it. But a lot of it's just because those buildings don't have that resiliency that we're talking about. They couldn't. And schools are they're kind of public gathering places. And then if there's a big seismic event and people's homes get damaged and stuff, usually those public gathering places become kind of safe havens, right? Yeah. They become shelters for people that have been displaced. So, yeah, it's something that's happening here locally. They're replacing schools that don't meet current seismic standards.
Makes sense. They talk about investment that pays. So talking about how dollars, that are invested, what the needs are, and into each category, and what the gap is. So I think that continues to be an issue, but much
Yeah, and
spent.
I see a little bit of a correlation there, Isaac, between the categories that have the biggest gaps and the ones that are getting the lowest grades.
Yeah, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. I don't remember, but they got it.
Yeah, those were in the D's, C minuses. There were some bad grades on that one. So if we were to, need to send some money in a certain direction, it looks like that one's an important one. Drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater.
They're saying there's a gap of $3.7 trillion for what they're looking for in investments into infrastructure. So,
wow. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Big chunk of money. They go over cumulative investment needs. So if you want to look at a breakdown of that, they do break down each category and showing what the needs are and what the gap is. But quite a bit of money is still needed for all.
Yeah, and I see that, and there's some improvement that can be made with making things more
Look at energy.
Well, just streamlined with the whole design and approval, a process that a typical project has to go through. Government oversight can bog things down really bad, and there needs to be some streamlining, some improvement in that aspect of at least project design and getting projects approved so that they can get under construction. There needs to be some efficiencies found there, and just to help close some of that funding gap.
I'm just looking at big needs. So it looks like energy's a big need, roads are a big need, and schools are a big need. Which kind of translates, it looks like, to the gaps as well. But wastewater's got a big gap.
Yeah.
Roads, energy, those are the big ones. Schools.
Yeah, there needs to be and again, this is my opinion, but there needs to be a reexamination of the regulatory agencies that are in government that review and approve these types of projects. There needs to be some streamlining, some
get stuff through quicker.
Yeah, they need to get things through the approval process quicker because regulatory requirements, it bogs things down horribly. And it's a lot of the reason why things don't happen.
Makes sense. So they list recommendations to raise our grades. We're going to sustain our investment. We're going to prioritize resilience, and we're going to advance policy and innovation. So I think that hits really on all three things. So we talk about sustaining our money, making stuff more resilient, and then policy is hopefully streamlining.
Yeah. So we're going to get the money to build the things. And then once we build them, they're going to be built well, right? So they're resilient. And then we got to keep advancing policy and innovation. And I think that's the sector that I was talking about, where we need to streamline some of the regulatory bottlenecks that get encountered.
Makes sense. More on sustained investment. Probably won't hit that much. You can go read through that, what Congress should be doing, how we prioritize our resilience. They just list some of the extreme weather events. They said in 24 we had 27 extreme weather events, caused 568 deaths and 182 billion in damages.
Yikes.
So that's a lot.
Yeah. And so the mentality is now a little bit more is, okay, these extreme weather events are coming. So let's plan on making infrastructure be able to withstand whatever extreme event that we think is coming. Let's make our infrastructure resilient. So I think that's the right way to go.
And they list here an interesting stat. It says every dollar spent on resilience and preparedness saves communities $13 in post-disaster costs.
Yeah.
So
love it.
That's a pretty good investment.
Yep.
What are some other interesting things? Advanced policy and innovation. They have some ideas there, but I think probably hit that one
right there at the end. Furthermore, policies must recognize and address the need to reduce delays in project permitting. Right?
Expedite repairs.
Yeah, that's a killer. It is really a killer on projects. That's got to get better.
Pain points.
Yep.
All right. And then, they do a further breakdown of each one of these. So aviation, bridges, broadband, dams, drinking water, energy, hazardous waste, inland waterways, levees, ports. It's all here. There's your public parks, we kind of thought was an outlier.
Yeah.
Roads, schools, solid waste, or stormwater, transit. It's all here. So anyway, really good executive summary, but I think we kind of just hit the highlights of that. That is the summary of the report card. I think things are getting better. And maybe to cap this off, what's this translate to in terms of a civil engineer and their career outlook?
Well, it's really positive is what that means. It's the need is just going to get greater and greater for competent, qualified civil engineers to be in the industry, to crank out, the design and be innovative too, in their design and helping things be resilient. But it's just, bottom line, Isaac, it's just going to create more and more demand for qualified civil engineers. And
more PEs are needed than ever before, and I don't see it slowing down. So even with the advent of AI and all these things people are worried about, I think you're in a solid career.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to require more specialization, right, of civil engineers. They're going to have to find a discipline that they like, and that's going to be their niche that they practice within. Yeah. I think it's going to require more and more of that, but the opportunities are just, they're going to be boundless. It's really great for somebody that's considering going into civil engineering, or it's really a good field to be in. It's only going to get better.
I agree. So if you need help on that journey, definitely check out our resources at civilengineeringacademy.com. We want to help you, and we'll be there every step of the way. You'll be learning from practicing engineers. So we are out there doing this stuff. But anyway, Mark, thanks for jumping on, sharing your wisdom on America's infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you, Isaac. That's it's always a good time, as I said. Thank you.
Okay. We'll talk to you later.
See ya.